people, and welcome to the I Am Conquering Mountains podcast. I'm your host, I Am Conquering Mountains. And as we continue this theme of I Am Conquering Childhood Trauma, I wanted to highlight a community that needs to be acknowledged. It's something that we often, as an educator in the school system, we often work with students, but the challenge becomes when we're working with students who we might not quite share a similar experience. So in working with students who have disabilities, I wanted to bring on a guest who is very knowledgeable in this field, who works with today's young people who have those disabilities to provide some insight for us on what we can do to better support those students, and to better support them as they come into our schools and as we work with those young people, and helping them to navigate the world that they live in as well. And we have a wonderful guest today. She has her doctorate in physical therapy in the American Physical Therapy Association Board. She is certified as a pediatric clinical specialist. She is trained in the Cuevas Medic exercises. I hope I said that correctly. She is the owner of Let's Move Mountains, where she works with today's young people from infancy to 21 who have varying disabilities. She provides supports for families with children who have disabilities. She uses her platform to educate us all on how to be more supportive and empathetic towards the disability community. And without any further ado, I want to give a warm welcome to Miss Dana Thompson.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining. It is so wonderful to have you as a guest. Watch some of your videos of you working with your kids. There's one kid in particular. I don't know if it's okay for me to say her name. Lucy. I love Lucy. She is she's always smiling and happy and things like that. So she's a wonderful and inspiring individual. Definitely wanted to bring you on today to talk about some of those challenges that kids face who are experiencing those disabilities, and also to provide some breadcrumbs for us who work with those young people in ways that we can better support those young people as well, and people that's in that community. So my first question is, what inspired you to become a physical therapist?
Yeah. So originally I was, when you're thinking about what are you going to do with the rest of your life type of thing. So like in high school, my grandfather had a heart attack, and I remember my aunt coming to me and kind of talking about him going to physical therapy. And I knew all along that I wanted to kind of be in the medical profession and be able to help people, but I definitely did not want to be a doctor. That seemed like way too much responsibility and like time in school and stuff. Or a nurse. And I had also played soccer growing up too. So initially I kind of thought, oh, this is kind of a way to stay within the realm of sports. So that kind of nailed down physical therapy. And then my mom had me, before you go to PT school, you usually have to kind of do observation hours that goes hand in hand with kind of your application. So my mom works in a school district, and she kind of invited me to come and shadow some of the therapists that worked there. And once I just have always loved kids, just always really enjoy working with them, talking with them, playing with them. And once I kind of found out that you could play with kids and be a physical therapist, I was like, oh, well, this is the path for me.
You were sold.
Yeah. So that was kind of my, and that was before I kind of went into school also itself too, as well. So I kind of knew from the beginning that would be the path that I would kind of take.
Nice. And then you ended up getting your doctorate.
Yeah. So these days you don't have to be a physical therapist. You have to go through the program of becoming a doctorate in physical therapy. So yeah, I hold that.
Nice. So you have your business, Let's Move Mountains. So we got Conquering Mountains, we got Let's Move Mountains coming together. It's all about those mountains.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I know why I put mountains in my business title. How come? What is the reason that you chose the name Let's Move Mountains?
Yeah. So I've had my company for about a year and a half now. So probably about 2 years ago, and I was kind of deciding to go out on my own and formulate a business. I guess all great ideas come while you're driving around in the car. I feel like you got a lot of time to think. So I was thinking about names. I really don't remember too many other ideas that popped into my head, but I just feel as if all of the kids that I work with in this specific kind of niche population, that they have a lot of, whether they be like hills, mountain, that there's just a lot that of effort and time
Yeah.
and commitment that they have to put into it. And I just want to be a part of helping them move them. So it kind of just came to me and just dropped into my lap while I was driving, and it just was more of like a catchphrase of like something that I wanted to do. And I was like, well, this sounds like a good business name also too,
Yeah.
of I want to help you move mountains. So it kind of is more of like a motto that turned into the name of the business
I
too.
love that. Love that. Did you have to like stop the car and hurry up and grab your phone so you can write it down?
That's a good point.
I always have to do that. I'm like, I need to get to a red light real quick. My notes in my phone is like full of ideas and everything. I gotta go back and look through it and stuff. I love that. I love the name. I love the idea of having mountains is something that you're trying to overcome, right? Because it's like when you see like a mountain and someone tells you to move it, it's like, how in the world I'm going to do that? It kind of makes it feel like it's impossible. You know, I think about people who have climbed Everest and things of that nature, and hearing the stories about how like, and watching movies and documentaries about stuff like people trying to climb mountains and things like that. You know, it makes it seem like it can look impossible, but it's something that you can overcome. You know, it's something that you can move or conquer.
Right.
So I think that that's beautiful. And I love the your logo as well with the flag and the wheelchair, the person at the peak of the mountain. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. How did you face any challenges with starting your business?
To be honest, I really didn't. I think it's kind of, I never graduated school thinking, oh yeah, one day I really want to own my own PT business. That was never a plan. And I think I've just taken opportunities that have felt right and have just like kind of come to me in the moment. And so when I kind of decided to go out on my own and start my business, it almost was just the type of like services that I give for the population are unique and aren't found very many places, especially in this area of like Metro DC area too as well. So I had worked at a company in Boston that's pretty renowned for these services, and they had been referring me a lot of clients that would go up there from this area, and then they would say, "Oh, we know somebody that lives in that area." So it kind of started that way, and I had enough that I was like, you know what, let me just try this. So it has really been pretty easy, beyond the fact of just there's a lot of things that, because I'm not a business minded person at all whatsoever, I've learned different things along the way. But I wouldn't say that they've been like terrible hardships. They're just kind of, a little bit of growing pains, but it was just something that felt natural and just felt needed at the time as well. So it just was a really easy progression to also.
Nice. And I think just like starting a business is a mountain to move within itself, you know, having the courage to step out there on your own. Like, I'm going to leave this job with benefits and the salary to go start my own where I don't even have a salary.
I was definitely nervous, but I felt good that it was just like the right time and that I had the right enough interest and support that I had already kind of established beforehand. So
I'm sorry, it's like a fly in here.
Oh yeah, I've been seeing that.
So can you explain what it's like to be a pediatric physical therapist working with children with disabilities?
So there's even within the realm of pediatrics, there's a lot of different types of reasons why kids might come into therapy. So when I first started working as a pediatric therapist, I kind of saw a lot of different types of kids, maybe just even with sports injuries and stuff like that. And just through different progressions, I started to kind of really hone in on kids with more like neurological diagnoses. So that's like more specifically of the clientele that I've seen now also too. So a lot of things that I think that you need to be able to kind of like really read and understand people pretty well, because a lot of a good majority of the kids aren't verbal like you and I
Mhm.
are. Everybody
Right.
has definitely a way that they communicate with you to like make sure that you know their basic
Yeah.
needs and when they've had enough or when they're happy or they're sad or they kind of want something. So, but you definitely have to take the time to understand them and build rapport with them also too as
Mhm.
well, not just like jump in and say, okay, we're gonna do all of these exercises, but take the time to
Yeah.
kind of build their trust as well,
Yeah.
especially for the ones that have a little bit more difficulties with just moving their body independently too.
Mhm.
There's you the kids can definitely tell if you're say like nervous or you're not confident with
Mm.
that, and they could definitely shows within them their attitude of how that they perform with you also as well.
Yeah.
So I think just a lot of it is kind of reading between a lot of lines of like body language, because also parents are another understanding like how far you can kind of push them and like
Yeah.
what boundaries that you need to create within and being respectful of those boundaries of the parent, of the client, of all of those
Mm.
things. I think it's a lot of to there's a good bit of like psychology, I think that runs
Yeah.
into it as well. Not that that was, the background of schooling, but
Right.
a lot of that kind of plays into being able to create like a really good, successful environment for the sessions.
Yeah, I like that you said that there's some psychology in it too, because like as a counselor, we will make those connections verbally with
Mhm,
kids,
mhm,
and we are also taught to pick up on nonverbal communication as
mhm,
well,
mhm.
body language and posture, whether a person's fidgeting and stuff like that. But with the work that you do with a lot of your clients being not without the kids being nonverbal, I kind of feel like it's like physical counseling as well too,
Yeah.
because you're picking up on those nonverbal cues,
Right. Yeah.
because they can't verbally say, hey,
Mhm,
this hurts, or this doesn't feel right, or I can
mhm.
touch you're nervous and stuff like that. So I feel like a lot of that nonverbal communication is definitely beneficial in being able to pick up on some of those things as well
Yeah.
too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So when kids first come to see you,
Mhm.
like, and you're picking up on those cues, those nonverbal cues, what kind of mindset do you think they're in when they first come?
So I believe that it really depends on there's a couple of different factors that play into it also. So it definitely the age of the child is a
Hmm.
large impact on it. So let's say like an older teenager type of
Hmm.
I feel as if that those clients when they come, they're more so choosing for themselves to come to therapy. Whereas when you're younger, it might be a little bit more of your parent is kind of the motivator behind like you going.
Right.
And as you're older and as a teenager, a lot more other things become important, like school and different things like that. So, like taking time out of your schedule to go to therapy has to be something that's important to you. So, with that being said, I feel as if those clients, they're definitely very motivated and very
Hmm.
goal oriented. So they're coming for like a very specific reason of really wanting to attain like X, Y, or Z within our therapy sessions.
Hmm.
When the kids are more elementary school age, there's definitely a little bit more of kids kind of, I think this is the time where they start to realize their differences from their
Hmm.
able-bodied peers. So they're really maybe like questioning, why do I have to use a walker, or why am I in a
Yeah.
wheelchair, or why am I going to therapy and not going to soccer practice, or different things like that. So they're a little bit more questioning and just kind of like being able to wrap their head around why is it that I'm different than
Hmm.
my other peers. And then within that, that kind of then you're maybe sequencing your like your sessions a little bit differently also too, or using different ways for like motivating. And
Hmm.
then when they're younger, like toddler, infant age too, those kids are usually they're there to play in the format that they know how to play.
Yeah.
That's like what our goals are too as well. So that's usually playful, unless they're kind of like a little bit stranger, anxiety ridden
Mhm.
or anything like that, then maybe it's a little bit more cheerful than at the start.
Yeah.
But generally, those are more like playful kind of minded within the
Mhm.
sessions.
Yeah. And is it challenging doing physical therapy with your clients? Like,
I don't find it. I mean, it's physically challenging for
Yeah.
on my part. It is like a very physical job in terms of
Hmm.
because I'm trying to provide them opportunities to perform things that they're just really not able to do on their own.
Yeah.
So with that, like they need some physical help with that. But outside of let's say like from like a mental aspect of it too, I've never found it very hard at all.
Yeah.
Just because I try to feel as if I'm imparting some like happiness to them as
Yeah.
well, and something that I feel is beneficial. I hope that they
Mhm.
feel is beneficial too as well, and I just find a lot of joy in being able to be a part of that.
Mhm.
So I try to kind of have that mindset, but physically it is a little bit difficult
Yeah.
sometimes, just with
Yeah.
different body types and different needs of that.
Yeah. I watching your videos with your kids. I definitely can see that they enjoy your company
Yeah, yeah.
because they're always smiling. They seem like they're very close and connected with you, and they trust you a
Mhm.
lot. How long does it take to build that trust?
I've had kids where it's taken a good while of time, like
Mhm.
maybe a few months. I don't know that type
Yeah.
of or there's been a few because I do believe for a fact too that like me personally, I might not be the best therapist for every person out there as well.
Mhm.
There's just some people that you innately connect with for whatever reason, and like some
Right.
that they're never going to connect with. So it's very few and rare between that I'm just like maybe we're not a good match. But for the
Mhm.
most part, I feel as if within the first like one or two sessions that like 75% of the people that I can kind of click with. And I think it's just because I really try to go in there with the attitude of trying to learn about them first, of like what
Mhm.
makes them tick and what makes them happy and what's the thing that I could do that is going to get them to participate a little bit more. So if I
Yeah.
make that more of a priority versus I want to get X, Y, and Z exercises or activities done, then I can kind of win them over, I guess, if you will, a
Yeah.
little bit more easily and readily within the first like one or two visits. Once you understand, oh, and they make this sound, they're like really angry and we really need to like
Mhm.
back off versus this like makes them really happy.
Yeah. And I know you talked about like the kind of mindset that the kids are in. What kind of
Mhm.
mindset are parents in when they
Yeah.
come?
So there, I think that also depends. That's why it really depends to maybe like how. Let's take for instance some of the kids they have maybe sustained like a brain injury at birth.
Mm.
So when they're younger, um, the parents are definitely more, I think, cautious of just making sure that they trust you and that you're going to take care
Mhm.
of their baby and kind of very much watching you. Some are okay with letting their kids cry, which does happen when you push kids a little bit to
Mhm.
to do things that are like outside of their comfort zone. And then some are, I definitely don't want to hear my baby cry at all. And I'm just always respectful of that too.
Yeah.
So those parents are maybe also then like from within the mental health kind of like still trying to maybe wrap their heads around I'm presented with a different situation than I thought I was going
Mhm.
to be in right now with like when I thought I was pregnant and having a child. So there
Yeah.
might be a lot of kind of guilt of one way or the other that they felt that they did something wrong or like there's something that they could have done as a mom differently or something like that. That's kind of in the early stages. Sometimes still continues for a while, just depending on, I
Yeah.
think, how you're, like you're understanding the diagnosis and such. And then when they're older and they're school age, there's sometimes a little bit more of frustration, I think, of just like the world that we live in, that it's hard
Mhm.
that they have to fight for everything, like in the school system of different accommodations that they're looking for, just like medical doctors aren't giving them the answers, the attention that they need. And then just, being frustrated that the world is a hard, harsh place for like
Yes,
all
it is.
in general. And then
Yeah.
adding this on top of it it just is harder for them to kind of really, let their little guys out there in the world.
Mhm. What kind of accommodations do parents seek when they're getting those accommodations in school? Do you know what kind of accommodations they look for?
So I know that definitely depends depending on the child, but some might be more I think different parents have different also maybe visions of like how they want their child to participate in school. So some want them a little bit more maybe like in a mainstream environment and not in like a very special needs classroom, and maybe the school might not feel that that's appropriate, so it might kind of that there's some clash that way. There might be some in terms of like one-on-one aids of like of is it appropriate or is it not appropriate? Do they need that? I'm trying to think of other things too. I think of just also then, because it's a little bit, I mean, in the school, I'm sure everybody's stressed to like the nth degree of all the things that you have to do. And then to think of, okay, I really want Johnny to be able to like participate in circle time. And this is the way that, you know, that we could get him down on the floor to be with the kids versus like sitting in a wheelchair. So different things of like making sure that then that extra thought is being taken like within the school day to make sure they're included that way, of just that the little bit extra that you kind of have to work to make sure that that's happening in school. I think that those are things that they kind of talk about, or sometimes too when they're, because there's therapies that like you could get PT or OT or speech in school too. So depending on if they want them pulled out of the classroom, like as often as that they, you know, they need to be for those things, that's or the timing of that too. Like maybe let's not do it during playtime with all their peers, or different things like that, I think are tricky too.
Yeah. Are kids, do you think that, you know, the kids that you work with, are they able to pick up sometimes when they're not being treated right in any
I
setting?
I do think so. I think that the ones that are like are able to talk to me and like verbalize to that I know 100% that they do feel that even throughout their, whether it's in school or even just like sometimes that they'll have different caregivers in and out of their life, that some are maybe a little bit more respectful than others too. So I've definitely heard like for kids that can talk that way. And I do think to some extent that then those kids that aren't able to verbalize too, that we don't give them enough credit for how much that they're really understanding, and even though that they can't tell us those things, that they're still taking in a lot of information too as well. And I do think that then you can maybe you see through their body language or like how that they do start to understand like I don't really like that person and the way that they maybe treat me or not.
How much does that impact a child when they know that, you know, maybe a kid in class said something about their disability, or a parent or an adult said something that was inappropriate? Like, how much does that impact the kid?
I'm just thinking of a girl that I was seeing the other day, and she kind of I think she was at a camp that actually was for children with disabilities too as well. And I think somebody just pointed out something about her that was different than maybe the other girl or boy was. And for her, it was definitely like, I don't understand why that they're asking me these things, and I don't understand why that they, because I mean, like they're living in their bodies and that's their world. So maybe it's hard for kids then to understand of just like, why can't you just accept me for who I am? And you have to love these, like what's so different about me that's making you not want to play with me or do those different things too. So I think sometimes it's hard for them to like wrap their head around, especially at like elementary school age, of just all the different nuances of the world, of just that people aren't always so nice to everybody else too. It's like a thing to wrap their heads around.
Do any of your kids ever get to the point where it's like, okay, well, what's the point? Nothing's gonna change.
There's so I've definitely there's a family that I'm thinking of in particular that I've had kind of this like conversation or like dialogue with, of just if they have in their mind, okay, I want my child to walk independently without a walker or something like that. That's my dream for them. And we're doing all of these therapies, and sometimes families travel like out of state and take time off work, spend a lot of money to do different kind of unique therapies that maybe aren't available to them where they live. And then it's just like, we're doing all of this. Is this ever going to be worth it one day to make this goal, or should I just stop? And I try to kind of support. I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell
Right.
you like that this will happen or this won't happen. I really wish that I could for so many kids because there's so many factors that go into the whys and the hows.
Yeah.
But I just try to also support them in what feels good and right to them at that
Mhm.
time. Because like therapy doesn't have to, just because you have like a diagnosis doesn't mean you have to be in therapy. It needs to be
Mhm.
something that you both value together. So there might be times where it's okay to take a break and to take a step back from therapy and like go do something that's more family
Mhm.
oriented or fun, and you're going to get a lot of value out of that, versus being in therapy and then come back when you are ready, or that's like
Yeah.
something that's important to you at that point in your life also too. So I try not to. And then if they are having like really big doubts of like, is this worth it? Is anything ever going to
Mhm.
change? Maybe try to, because there's differences between these like big milestones that you're going to achieve and then
Mhm.
little, I've heard people call it inch stones along the way.
Ah,
So
I like that term, inchstone.
yeah, so thinking of, okay, we didn't achieve this walking, but look at these small little things that we're
Yeah.
achieving along the way that's working towards that. And I can't tell you if we're ever going to achieve this big milestone down here, but like these things, are these impacting your life and making things easier at home? Or if they're not, then maybe this isn't the time for therapy. Like maybe this isn't what we should be doing.
Mhm.
But if they are, then here's the reasons why to kind of continue. So maybe to like focus it on not the big picture, but all the little things that are happening along the way too,
Yeah.
which is hard to. It's hard to see in your everyday life, these small little changes, but although maybe a little bit easier for me if I'm
Yeah.
not in your life every day type of thing.
And do you often see your clients every day?
So there's yeah, so what I'll like typically do, like how I kind of do therapy for these kids is that I'll see them in like a chunk of anywhere from a week to 3 weeks in a
Mhm.
row. So, and then I'll see them Monday through Friday for that week to 3 weeks. And then we take a break for a little while and then come back and do that again. So that's the way that
Okay.
I see most of my kids. Some I just see maybe like once every week or something like that too as well. But the like bursts of activity, like the of therapy, seems to be really helpful for them to kind of achieve their skills a little bit more easily and readily than like seeing once a week or something like that.
And do you also have kids that have had, like, accidents and that has changed their condition?
Yeah, there's a
Mm.
couple. I would That's like not as readily, but there are a few that maybe that they were typically developed or didn't
Yeah.
have a disability from like say ages 0 to 3, and then they
Mhm.
were in a car accident that dramatically changed kind of into more of a disability, or some instances of kind of that they gotten some kind of illness and then that
Mhm.
developed into like a brain injury also too as well. So there's, I mean, a lot of different things that could happen in the world
Yeah.
that really eye-opening. But yeah, um, those are, I think, a different mentality that you also have to have too, because there was a time
Yeah.
in the life that there was a more able-bodied individual too. So that's a little bit different versus the kids that are just kind of born and suffered a brain
Mhm.
injury or born with a genetic disorder or something.
Yeah. I asked that question because when I was in college, there
Mhm.
were 2 individuals that come to mind. One had his name is leaving me right now, but he was able to move about, like a regular, normal human being. Um, and he didn't have any disabilities at first, but then he ended up having like a surgery for something, and the
Uh,
surgeon made a mistake
mhm.
and cut something
Mhm.
he wasn't supposed to cut,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was in a coma for like months, and then he woke up, and now he's in a wheelchair. Has a slurred speech. One of his
Mhm.
eyes won't open, and then another guy, his name was Ezra. He uses a Segway to get
Okay.
around.
Okay.
He can walk, but his knees stay locked out or locked in, I guess. And he had a car accident,
Okay.
and guy he was on vacation, I think in like Jamaica, driving with his mother or his grandmother, and guy ran a red light, crashed into his side, and then he had a brain injury. So now he like uses a Segway to kind of walk around. But just thinking, like, as you just talked about, having, not having a disability and then now having to transition to learning this new world,
Mhm.
is does that create any difficulties for a kid, like psychologically?
I think so. I think that the few that I've worked with, they've been more than they've been younger and haven't been older.
Mm,
So I haven't been able to get them maybe more the kid perspective, but more of like a parent perspective,
mm,
which that's definitely just is hard for the family all around. I think, yeah, you have a before and after thought in your
yeah.
a picture in your head. But I think that those are a little bit harder for me to internalize
Hmm.
and kind of not put yourself best forward, but those affect me just a little bit more. I think of just
Yeah.
knowing that this before and after is just a little bit of a different, maybe like from a mental health like aspect of like of a way that you kind of deal with it too as well. But I haven't really gotten the opportunity of as many older kiddos to be able to really then like have conversations with them surrounding that of their
Yeah.
feelings and different things like that.
Good, good, good. And you are a doctorate in physical therapy, and you are trained in, is it Cuevas Medic?
Yeah, so it's yeah,
Okay.
Medic exercises. Yeah, so that is so if you've the different kind of like probably the one video in particular that just got a lot of attention of just kind of like flipping.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's like
Uh,
a exercise that that's within this like training activity. So you wouldn't really see if you go into another kind of pediatric clinic
mhm,
that doesn't have that. Or some people are also trained in a technique called DMI also too, or it's a similar type of thing. But it really just the thing that I've seen once I got trained in it, so like before I was and after I was, it just kind of gave me a different way to handle it, the kids to make
mhm,
them do a little bit more work. And but the thought too is that you kind of put kids in different positions to be able to provoke a response, like using moving against gravity or different things
mhm.
like that to give them opportunities to kind of move their bodies in ways that they haven't been exposed to before.
Nice, nice. I remember, I think like one of your videos had popped up on like one of my suggested reels on like Instagram, and the first time I saw it, I think you were with Lucy, and
Yeah.
you had did the little flipping thing. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness, what is going on? I thought it was like a mother playing with her daughter, and then I saw like she was able to kind of stretch out.
Mhm.
Is that a form of progression in that exercise?
Yeah, so like with that one in particular, the thought is that I kind of give her like the reason why I say you like flip them around is you're giving
Mhm,
them what's called like vestibular inputs. You're provoking like their inner ears and just like giving their body
mhm,
some feedback. And then she kind of lands in a position where her brain should kind of tell her, okay, I don't want to be like flexed down, looking down at the ground, but I want to
mhm,
be up. So for her, like a way to progression is because she kind of goes up and she might not like get all the way up, but she kind of
mhm.
stops a little bit. So like we would be working to get all the way up and
Ah,
then without kind of using like other muscle groups that I don't want her using to be able to
yeah.
get there also too as well. But yeah.
Nice, nice. Did I see her standing on her own?
Yeah, I saw that. Yes, so I'm actually
Yeah.
it's funny because I'm with her this week and next week also too as well.
Okay.
And yeah, and then I saw that picture yesterday that
Yeah.
you posted too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was clapping, I was applauding
I
her.
yeah, she's gotten a lot of. I don't know
Mm.
how that happened, but she's gotten so much. She just kind of
Yeah.
made me a little bit, put me on the map a little bit out there.
Yeah. I know you got like almost what, 200,000 followers now?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't
yeah,
know how
yeah.
that happened. I had like maybe 200 like 2 months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, no, it
awesome.
just
That's
like one
awesome.
weekend I was just like, oh, I'm up to like 1,000. And like that I think was like my goal of life to like get to
Yeah.
1,000 because I'm not doing this to like be, Instagram,
Yeah.
whatever. I just want to be able to like get my name out there to be able to help as many kids as I can too. But yeah, for some
Mhm.
reason that this one particular video just took off and then
Yeah.
just like so many that's kind of
Was
hit
your
our
phone like
thumbs.
pinging?
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know what's going on.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It
Yeah.
just shows that, your work is very vital
Yeah,
to
very
these
true.
young people's lives, and
Mhm.
or to your clients' lives. And people really appreciate the work that you're doing,
Mhm.
especially gaining the additional certifications that you need to make sure
Right.
you're able to help every kid that comes to you,
Mhm.
and giving them those supports that they need. That is wonderful. What kind of supports do you offer, or like what kind of conversations do you have with parents when they come to see you and you're setting those goals for their kids?
Yes, that's usually always it's very important on that first like session that you have with
Hmm.
somebody just to find out what's important to them
Hmm.
because a take away like anybody with a disability, but like any Joe Schmo could walk off the street into a therapy clinic and just be like, okay, find something wrong with me. And you could find something that's like quote unquote wrong, that like we're
Yeah.
all asymmetrical or like got a little something going on, but it may not impact us functionally at all. So like you don't
Right.
need to do physical therapy for that. And same like kind of principle happens within like the disability world that like just because you have this disability does not definitely mean that you have to be in PT, but if you take two people that have a similar disability and it's really important for this family that maybe that they're gaining a little bit more strength and standing so that like as they take them out of the wheelchair and go
Hmm.
transfer them somewhere else that they could help with that. And then
Hmm.
maybe this other family, it's really important that they can learn to like pick their head up a little bit more so that when they're at the dinner table or like watching TV, like I don't that they're more engaging and
Yeah.
something like that. So I think that it's definitely really important from the get-go to just kind of be able to talk about what's important to you, what would you like to see your child do better and or
Mhm.
have be able to participate in something a little bit more so and definitely as they're older then also making sure that that conversation's had with the client too as
Mhm.
well of like what's important to you, is there things that we could do that would make your life a little bit
Yeah.
more pleasurable or something like that too. So yeah, that's a big part of the very first visit. And then usually when you're seeing them for a while, two different things come up as well. Like, oh, I was, in this situation this weekend, and
Mhm.
like it would be a little bit helpful if we could work on being able to do X, Y, and Z. So that's a really big part. So that it's meaningful to
Yeah.
as well, and you have something that I'm not just doing random things just because I think it's important because it
Right.
doesn't matter what I think at all. It matters what they want to
Yeah.
accomplish.
And do you ever have to have do you ever get parents who have goals that, when you work with the kid and you see that the kid might not be able to do those things? Do you ever have to have those kind of conversations?
I think that they've been far and few between. I've been fortunate where most families, by the time that they come to me, I think that they have like a realistic view of what their child maybe that they want for them versus
Mm-hmm.
not. And so if I encounter something like that, then maybe I might take it because again, I try not to limit
Yeah.
the potential of the child because the brain is a beautiful thing and who knows like what might come down the road or things like that. So and I had definitely have seen kids where in the back of my mind I'm thinking, I don't know if they'll ever get to this like goal. And then through like a lot of hard work and determination, I
Yeah.
see, oh, if they accomplish that, they like,
Nice.
which isn't it's not the case for everybody, but for some maybe. So if they're coming with something that maybe I'm thinking, walking's always like the big ultimate goal in physical therapy too as well. But
Yeah.
maybe if they come to that and I think, oh boy, this is going to be a hard stretch. So maybe I might kind of just like dial it back in terms of, okay, these are all of the things that we need to accomplish before we could get to walking. So
Mhm.
let's like focus our attention on like gaining strength and this and that, like focusing on those inch stones to, and we'll see how those
Mhm.
go. So maybe not to take hope away, but and then maybe change it into, well, maybe they won't walk totally
Mhm.
by themselves, but maybe we could get them walking with some kind of like assistive device of some kind, or so
Mhm.
to give them then maybe options of that might still be possible, but maybe just
Mhm.
not in the way that like you're imagining, and that's okay, and they'll still be able to participate in this way. That
Yeah. I love that. I love that because I asked that question because I'm being a educator. with even with kids who don't have disabilities, when we're looking at, their performance in the classroom, their behavior, their academics, and things like that, I hear so many times that, oh, your kid can't do this, or they're not going to be able to do that. And I'm like, how do you
Yeah.
100% know they're never going to be able to
Mhm.
do that with? And then it's usually in a conversation where we're talking about supports and accommodations.
Right.
And like maybe they can with the right support and
Right. Right.
accommodations. So it's like
Right.
kind of killing a parent's dream of things that they could be doing. And I know there's some times where, we have to make some accommodation, things of that nature. But then
Mhm.
it's like with the accommodations and with the support, I think that, the kid would be okay. And I often have to advocate for that as well
Right.
too. So thank you for sharing that. That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're working with your kids, like how rewarding is it when you see them making that progress?
Yeah, it's like a super special thing just to be able to see that. I think there's like a couple factors that play into it of,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm different than like a doctor where you see the doctor like once or twice a year or something like that. I'm
Yeah.
seeing kids, every day for a couple weeks at a time, like multiple times through the year. So you really get to like know them and the family very
Mhm.
intricately and like in depth, and sometimes feel like very a part of their lives too. So like
Mhm.
if you have that super personable connection and then just knowing how hard and how they want to accomplish these different things, if I could sit back and say like, oh, I was a little bit, because it definitely is not always all me. There's so many other people and other things that
Yeah.
are going on that impact that too. But if I could have made like a little dent of like into their happiness, that just it fills my soul. It's just like what it's
Mhm.
why I do kind of what I do. And yeah, I don't think that there's any greater feeling for me too.
I can imagine, man. I mean, because I just think about the feeling that I get when I see my students taking the advice and actually applying it and
Right, right,
using
right,
it.
right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm thinking about like for you, seeing a kid going from how they came to you in the condition that they were in, working with them to help them accomplish those goals.
Mhm.
Do you see that rewarding feeling in your kids when they make those steps towards progress?
Definitely, yeah. That's definitely when even kids where that aren't able to vocalize that and verbalize that, of just sometimes
Mhm.
like the smiles that they have of
Yeah.
just like knowing I just did something that was really hard and like that we've been working on for a while,
Yeah.
and knowing that too. And I to go back to of just it's one of my favorite things is even like maybe we're working on something, maybe we didn't quite
Mhm.
attain it, but then like the parents, they might send me a video or something like that afterwards to like,
Yeah.
oh, look what they're doing. And like, those are my favorite things to get also too,
Mhm.
as well, of just like, that they're thinking about, like sharing that
Mhm.
with me. That's like really special that you decided to
Nice.
take your time to send me that too. But
Yeah.
it's awesome.
So you kind of become like a part of the family.
Yeah,
In a
there's
sense.
definitely
Yeah.
there's families that I mean it's a very different like blurred line in pediatrics versus like
Yeah.
you going in for like getting your shoulder treated.
Right.
I think because especially too it's sometimes like over a really long time
Mhm.
period too. Like I might be in their life for like years and years and years.
Yeah.
And right now too, I don't have like a clinic space. I go into everybody's home, so then that's also a
Okay.
different kind of like a personable space. But
Yeah.
I definitely there's some families that like if they're willing to share so much, like I'm right there with them, like sharing if you
Yeah.
need more space, then that's our relationship. But there's definitely families that I mean, I feel so super, super close with too. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. That's got to be a very rewarding and blessed feeling.
Uh-huh.
Especially like to have the trust to have people to allow you to come into their homes, be in their
Absolutely.
personal
Yeah. Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
working with their kids, and then trusting you to work with their kids and make that
Mhm.
progress. And then to get to a point where you're getting phone calls and text messages and
Yeah.
pictures about what their child did. Oh my goodness, that part would make me cry, like
Mhm.
tears of joy.
I definitely have.
I probably need to like ride around with like a box of tissue all the time. That's awesome. So when you work with your kids and you're navigating through that progress, is there ever a time where you're like, okay, now it's time for you to spread your wings and fly
Mhm.
and leave me?
There's definitely, and I think that's the hard part too of what they would call it, like discharge from therapy
Yeah.
too, as well, of kind of like being done or like taking a break too, because I think then the parents are like, well, what's the next thing that we could
Yeah.
accomplish, or like we could like do a little bit more, and it's hard to kind of maybe. So sometimes I approach it and like, okay, we're going to like not see each other for a couple of months, and then like let's let them now use all of these new skills that they just
Mhm.
attained and kind of put them into practice and let them be a kid. I think also too is really important, or like maybe giving them different ideas of, okay, let's now go into this like adaptive dance class, or like giving them other opportunities of working on things that we were working on in therapy, but like in a
Yeah.
more typical, like what other kids their ages are doing too as well.
Yeah.
But it's a hard thing to kind of like commit, because you just always want the next, the
Yeah.
next best thing for
Yeah.
your child also too as well. So it's, I don't know, there's some sometimes I'd have a hard time, and I'm just kind of like, well, I'll just keep, if you just want me in your life,
Yeah.
keep on going with it too.
Yeah. I can imagine it's probably really hard to like let them
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So for people who work with young people who have disabilities,
Mm.
people like myself in the education field, what kind of advice would you give to someone who is working with a kid who has disabilities, and helping them to navigate just life in general? Like, how would
Mhm.
you guide them into approaching that kid?
I think the one very important thing is like kind of not being afraid to ask them questions too.
Mhm.
One thing that I really like to do with kids that are older that I see is, especially, I think it helps me become a better therapist too. If they can verbalize and vocalize to me, I kind of usually ask them like, so with this exercise, I'm trying to make your body feel X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Are you feeling that? Or is this just in my head that you should feel that way? And then they could give me that feedback. So then I could kind of use that with some of my younger kids or kids that aren't able to vocalize to me, of like, oh, I'm like gripping really hard and this is hurting, or this is not doing that. So I have to adjust X, Y, and Z. So I think like not being able to have, or not being afraid to ask them questions of
Mhm.
how is this, making you feel, or like, or what is it that you feel that I could do differently or better to better help you.
Yeah.
Um, but doing that in a way too that's, I don't know, respectful to them, but also
Right.
maybe if they're not comfortable with talking about certain things, like giving them the opportunity to just not, like engage in the conversation too as well. So I think that that's one thing that's really important to kind of remember. And I think for people in general too, of just that, to remember we're all just people at the same, at the end of the day, that we all want the same things, of like, we want to be friends
Mhm.
with other people, we want to be loved, we want to be included. And sometimes that's hard to know when you're not in that world of, well, how do I make that happen for people? And I think that I feel like the best way to just really learn is just to really ask,
Yeah.
but also know too that it's not their responsibility to really educate you as well too. Like
Right.
that doesn't have to be the thing that they carry with them all through their life. So being respectful of if they want to talk about it versus not.
Mm.
But but yeah, just to knowing that they're people too. They want to interact. They want you to say hi to them and do all of those
Yeah.
things too as well. But everybody's different too of how they feel respected or
Mhm.
included. So at the end of the day, if you really truly want to know, to really truly just ask them,
Yeah.
or if they're not able to, maybe their caregiver or something like that as well.
Mhm. Like, don't dance around it. Just ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I think that they appreciate that too as well, that they're of people being blunt and upfront.
Mhm.
I mean, there's definitely things that parents have told me of, that people, strangers come up to them in the grocery store and like say obnoxious things to
Oh,
them that,
mercy.
like, I don't even know why you would think that's nice to say to anybody. So
Right.
making sure that you're respectful, or just like leaving
Yeah.
it. Do you mind if I ask about X, Y, and Z? And then like if
Yeah.
they're saying yes, then they're open to having a conversation about like why they're in a wheelchair, like why maybe they
Mhm.
have a tube coming out of their neck or something like that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful advice. Definitely will
Mhm.
make sure I take that into my practice as a counselor. Um, you mentioned that you don't have like a brick and mortar
Mhm, mhm.
facility. Is that something that is in the works for you? Is that something that you're looking for?
As my goal for for January 2024 to be able to have that.
Mhm.
We'll see, but that's
Yeah.
my ultimate goal to be able to do that. Yeah, and to kind of like grow a little bit more to hire people
Mhm.
and things like that. That's probably the when you asked about what's difficult about the business, this like first part was really easy,
Yeah.
and now this part where it becomes you're a little bit more financially invested in a different way
Yeah.
than like have a little bit more responsibility. This is like I've been putting it off for a little while, but I think it's time that I need to just go ahead and do it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely
Take the
something
leap.
that
Take the leap of faith.
yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So if
Mhm.
someone wanted to work with you, how would they find you?
Yep. So they can email me. That's generally how I do most of my communication. So Dana at Northern Virginia or northernvacme.com. Also my website too as well, which I believe is northernvacme.com as well, or on Instagram too as well. Let's Move Mountains. So any of those I check
Okay.
all of the time and readily and get a lot of messages through all of those too. And I'm pretty quick with feedback and things like that too. But all those ways people can connect with me.
And I'll post those links on the in the bio once I post the episode
Okay, great.
as well. This has been a wonderful, wonderful
Yeah, thank
conversation.
you. Yeah.
Thank you, Miss Dana, for all of the wonderful insight you share with us, especially educating the world on working with people who have or kids who have disabilities, but also the work that you do and how vital that is
Hmm.
to the kids and to the families that you work with. And we greatly appreciate all that you do. And I hope those followers keep going up. Lucy is going to have you like in the millions in a minute. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you, Dana, for all that you do with the kids that you work with and families that you serve as well. This is I Am Conquering Mountains, host of the I Am Conquering Mountains podcast. Until next time, may God bless each and every one of you and keep crushing your goals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give me 1 second while I stop the recording.